He is now in session. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Esslinger.
Here.
Senator Brown. Senator Beck. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent. You have established a quorum.
Thank you. Good morning. So this morning we have 5 bills to hear today, and we're going to start with House Committee Substitute for House Bill 668, Representative Houx. You may begin when you are ready. I'm going to mention as well that we have 5 bills, so we're going to try to move the testimony pretty fast, okay?
Don't have to worry about me talking quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Representative Dan Houx, representing Johnson County in the 54th District. In front of you today, we have House Bill 668. It deals with cybersecurity. It's a grant program of $10 million per year of appropriated funds. The first part of it goes to small businesses, 1 through 50 employees. Then past that, it goes on to the bigger companies that we have in the state. Currently, right now, you don't understand, you're getting attacked by cyber right now. It's going on constantly throughout our days. We're just trying to help small businesses, first of all, be able to put this into their businesses. Just a small grant, they have to have a little buy-in to it of 10% of it. So if they want $10,000, they've got to have a 10% buy-in to it also. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Sir, are there any questions for the representative? Senator Mosley.
Typically, how much would it cost to put the cyber security in?
It depends on the size of the business, but this is a maximum grant of $15,000. It's just a start to help these small businesses.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Thank you, members.
So now we will hear testimony in favor of. Good morning, Kara.
Good morning. Kara Korches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, also in support. We know that the threat of cyber attacks is more severe today than ever before. We see the headlines on the news of big hospitals and banks and cities who have had ransomware attacks that have completely shut down their operations, but what you don't hear are the attacks that are happening on small business every single day. We have heard from cybersecurity experts that actually your small businesses are the top target for cyber criminals because it's kind of the low-hanging fruit for them. They think probably a good chance that they don't have any cyber defense, and so they go after them. One example we've heard, your hometown realtor is often a top target. When you think about escrow accounts and when they send out a link when you're buying your first time home ever, and somebody then does a business compromise email and then it redirects that escrow payment that you saved up for years to somebody overseas, it's devastating. And so we just want to make sure that our businesses have the resources to begin to think about cybersecurity. To answer Senator Mosley's question about the cost, it's widely variable on the type of business you have, the size, but for a small business to do even the most basic risk assessment, which determines what types of cybersecurity provisions they need, that roughly starts at about $20,000 just to do that. So a $15,000 grant is a drop in the bucket, but it's at least a start to get businesses on this track. A small business owner or any business owner, they're really good at what they do, whether that's running a restaurant, whether that's running a bank. They're probably not going to be experts in cybersecurity, though. And so this is just a great bill to hopefully provide some protection for our economy. Lastly, there are thousands of jobs in Missouri that are actually tied to Department of Defense contracts. And right now, the Department of Defense has some very, very stringent cybersecurity requirements to be awarded any contract. And so this is going to help a lot of our small manufacturers comply with those requirements as well. We did poll our members, and 80% say that cyber attacks are a growing concern. That is pretty significant. So for these reasons, we are in strong support, helps protect Missouri's economy from these devastating and disruptive cyber attacks. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Yes, Senator Mosley.
So out of the qualified applicants, how will you determine who gets the grants? Is everybody going to receive the grant that applies that's qualified, or are you going to pick and choose who gets the grants?
It would be at the discretion of Department of Economic Development, and it is set up to be a competitive grant process. So I believe probably they're going to look at things like how much you're putting up as a match to the grant, probably your risk, your location. I think all those things would be taken into consideration. But again, it's competitive. It's not just everyone's first come, first serve. You do have to be a qualified applicant.
So how would we prevent discriminatory practices from happening with this? Like, how would we keep this from people from discriminating against certain businesses?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that, honestly. I mean, if it's at the discretion of the department, I don't think their intent would ever be to discriminate against certain types of businesses. And I know from our stance, we celebrate all types of businesses in the state, and so we certainly want to ensure that there is fair and equitable access for all businesses to these grants.
Any further questions? Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. David Kent, registered lobbyist for the Missouri Bankers Association. Just want to go on record in support of the bill. This is important not only for our banks, but also our bank customers.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Ray McCarty, Associated Industries of Missouri. Want to go on record in support of this also. One of the things that we have found, and we were told by cybersecurity experts, is people that often are the least experienced with the computers, sometimes the CEOs or the CFOs, have top security clearance. And so if they can hack that person, send them a link that they don't realize they're clicking on, they click on a link and they get access to that person's credentials, they're able to really hack into that company and do a lot of damage. Senator Mosley, to your question, I think you would have the hooks through the appropriations process because this is all appropriated. So if you find out that they are doing, that DED is not running this program correctly, you would have the hook to be able to pull them back. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for this witness?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. Good morning.
Madam Chair, David Overfelt, Missouri Grocers and Missouri Retailers Association, and we do support this endeavor. A lot of my grocers spend a lot of money in cybersecurity. Small businesses don't really have access, or even though they maybe have one computer doing their payroll and everything and tax withholding on a wireless system and maybe one cash register, the cost can still be pretty high for these little people.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for this witness? Thank you. Good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Bill Shuhai appearing today on behalf of Microsoft and LinkedIn. From the Microsoft perspective, obviously cybersecurity is a huge focus of our company and working with small businesses on that challenge every day. From the LinkedIn perspective, one of the things the bill does is it allows employers, in terms of enhancing cybersecurity, one of the ways they can do that is upskill their employees. And LinkedIn offers a number of industry-recognized credentials that allow an employer to upskill employees in the area of cybersecurity. So for those reasons, we support the bill.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none?
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, Katie.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Katie Gamble here on behalf of Fortinet. They're a leading cybersecurity company. I want to go on record in support of the bill and in support of getting increased access to cyber tools for our businesses in the state.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Shannon Cooper today representing the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. Just go on record in support of the legislation. I don't know that I can add anything that the previous witnesses did not talk about. So with that, we're just happy to be in support of the bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further in favor of? Okay, we'll go on to in opposition to. Do we have anybody who would like to testify in opposition of? Seeing none. Do we have anybody here for information purposes only? Seeing none. Representative, do you have any closing remarks? All right, thank you, thank you. And now we're going to kind of bounce just a little bit. If Senator Fitzwater is ready. Okay, Senate Bill 645.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is, I'm Senator Travis Fitzwater, 10th District, and bringing before you Senate Bill 645. It's a state auditor update language in their authority. In the state, I was asked by the auditor's office to carry this to update some outdated language. There's 5 provisions in here that I think are important for the auditor's office to have available to them. One is it allows law enforcement, if they ask for an audit, allows the auditor's office to investigate. It gives the auditor subpoena power when conducting an investigation. It clears up old statutes surrounding closeout audits for county collectors, which hasn't been modified since the 1980s. It cleans up the duplicative language in the audits of state insurance, so they already do audits under their funds. They're already in the audit, so it just is cleanup language there. And then it better protects the identity of whistleblower complaints from public record. In the event that they get a whistleblower complaint, just want to make sure you protect those whistleblowers. The auditor's office is here to answer any technical questions, but I'm glad to take any questions. It's just making sure our auditor has every tool under their tool belt to keep the government accountable.
Okay, any questions for this witness? For this senator. Seeing none. So we're taking testimony in favor of. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brandon Alexander, Chief of Staff for State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick. The auditor wishes he could be here in person, but as we speak, he and his wife are welcoming son number 4 into the world. Last check, they still didn't have a name, so I think he's listening in live, so if you guys have any suggestions for names, fire away. Appreciate the good senator bringing this piece of legislation forward for your consideration. He did a great job of kind of walking through high level the 5 core provisions. The one thing that I would add on the first provision that he discussed, currently when we conduct an investigation, that was a provision that was put in place in 2013, the whistleblower complaint hotline under then Auditor Schweik. We can do an initial investigation, but if we find that there is actually flames where there was smoke, we have to wait for that government entity to either pass a resolution welcoming us in to conduct an audit, which is highly unlikely. If that governing body is actually doing something nefarious, they're probably not going to say, come on in, check out our books. Or the citizens of that political subdivision have to circulate a petition and get signatures in order to welcome us in. So this just streamlines the process, makes it to where we can get to the root of the problem quicker and identify that. Or at the end of an audit, it could reveal that there was no wrongdoing and that what was thought was to be nefarious was not actually nefarious. So happy to answer any other additional questions. Otherwise, thank you for your time this morning.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Crawford.
Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning.
Would you talk to me a little bit about the collectors portion?
Sure.
What we're changing there? I'd like to look out for my county officials too.
No. So with the collector's position, historically, before the mid-1980s, collectors, their salary, their pay was actually based on fees and commissions that they collected. So anytime there was a vacancy in that office, it was required, it still is required within 30 days that we go in and do an audit of that. And historically, that was to ensure that they weren't padding their salary by collecting more fees and commissions than they otherwise should. Now, in 1985, they switched it to a salary-based payment like other county officials, so there's less of a concern there on that front. The way that the language is drafted, the county commissions can still request us to come in and do an audit if we need to. It just does away with that automatic trigger that's in statute.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Seeing none, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I didn't hear any names, so I guess he's still nameless.
I was going to say, yeah. I like Samuel. All right, anybody else want to testify in favor of? Okay. Do we have anyone who would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. Anybody for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Senator, do you have any closing remarks? Thank you. House Committee Sub 475, for House Bill 475. Representative Taylor, aye. You may begin when you're ready. Oh, that'd be great. I think that is a lovely idea. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Representative Tim Taylor from the 48th District, bringing forward to you House Bill 475, which is going to codify into statute the Geospatial Advisory Council. Excuse me. This council already exists, but it's not in statute. So the purpose of this is actually to give it some, I say authority, to give it some guidance to allow all of that information which is gathered across the state that deals with GIS and GPS mapping, all of that stuff that we use in our everyday life. If you use your GPS in your car to get anywhere in the state, you're using this information. Right now there's a sense that it's from the local level to the state level, we're overlapping work that's being done to gather this information. So the thought is that this council, if codified, will have the ability to take that information and kind of streamline it and be kind of a clearinghouse for that, so we're not duplicating work across the state. It's also to give those counties and cities the ability to look at that information and say, hey, can we get that? My interest in this came from my fire service. I'm a retired firefighter, and 25 years ago, my division chief came to me and said, hey, this is a new technology that we're going to be using extensively, and so I gained a little bit of interest in that. As I've said many times, I'm an end user of these products, so I'm not, technical knowledge is not there, but I use it every day just like everyone. This is, well, it's just, it's I think 19 different state entities are going to be represented on here. The House version has 33 different individuals who will be on this council. They'll be not paid. The fiscal note is, from the House side, is $50,000. That represents fuel costs, fuel expense for them to meet monthly. There is a little bit of difference between the House version and the Senate version, though it started out the same. Going through the process on the House side, it changed a little bit. So and it was all about who gets to sit on the council. That's the only thing that was changed. So it is a little bit different, but by and large, it's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Are there any, well, let's go ahead and hear Senator Roberts.
Oh,
yeah.
Very brief. Several states, such as Tennessee, Kentucky, and Utah, have all formed these geospatial advisory councils. I've had the opportunity to learn from each of those states' respective GIS coordinators. These councils have been crucial for the development of next-generation 911 systems, broadband mapping, transportation mapping, environmental management, amongst several others. Due to Representative Taylor's leadership, HB475 passed the House 156-0, and we hope to get this across the finish line together. We gladly answer any questions. We've got some witnesses here as well.
Okay. Senator Black.
How did you know that? Just knew. Okay, this question doesn't have anything to do with the bill, but maybe this is a group. The Litton Center, where I worked at beforehand, when you put it into your maps, you end up about 3.5 miles away, and my telephone number is still associated with that. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody's coming to the livestock show. I get a telephone call and have to get them out of the Grand River bottom to the Ag Center. And I've talked to lobbyists, I've talked to our chief, fire chief, I've talked to police department. Nobody can change that. Can this group change that point and get it to the right place?
Senator, I will defer that to someone in the back who may be able to answer that, but I surely don't. I will tell you that I found out this information through Firefighter Day at the Capitol yesterday, and then also the day before that, EMS Day at the Capitol, that there are 3 counties in this state that still are not able to jump into the enhanced 911 that we're trying to get across the state. So And I asked why that's the case, and they said, well, they just don't have the mapping, they don't have the technology, they don't have the means by which to get that done at this point. So the goal, I think, would be is to allow them to reach into this clearinghouse and be able to, and again, I can't tell you the technical side of this, but the hope is that will help get this established all across the state.
All right, any further questions? Senator Brown?
You mentioned the only difference really between the House and Senate version was who serves on the council. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, I'll have. So we had originally had the National Guard in the first version, and then it was said, well, no, it's not necessarily the National Guard now, it is the, I need to go to your Senate version so I can say it properly. The Missouri Military Advocate or Advocate's Designee, and then National Guard, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure the separation here, but National Guard said, no, we're the ones that actually we're the actual people who are doing the work with GIS. So we need to be in there. So in order to, I mean, in the process, this thing could have gotten huge. I mean, everybody has a card to play, really. You know, it affects everybody, but the intent is to try to keep it at a minimum. So we landed on 33 people, so we dropped the advocate out, put the National Guard back in.
Any further questions? Seeing none. We'll now have testimony on folks who are in favor of. And please state if you're testifying for the Senate bill or the House, or both.
Good morning. My name is Tony Spicci. I'm the Executive Director of the GIS Certification Institute, and I'm actually testifying on behalf of both bills. Senator Eislinger, ladies and gentlemen of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of both of these bills. Developing legislation like this has been a career goal of mine, and I'm very honored to be here on behalf of the bill. I was the GIS coordinator for the state of Missouri at the Department of Conservation for a number of years, and I was also the Geographic Information Officer for the state, a job I performed in addition to the one at Conservation. I'm also a member of the Boone County Fire Protection District and Missouri Task Force 1, and I'm currently the Executive Director of the GIS Certification Institute. Common thread in all these positions is my use of geographic information systems to help produce a better outcome for all. If you can't tell, I have quite a passion for GIS. GIS is a toolbox that allows us to look at, analyze, display, and make good decisions from data very quickly and very efficiently. And it allows you to display that data in several easy-to-use and understandable formats, most notably the map. If you have one of these, you're participating actively in Google or Apple's GIS program. Missouri was an early adopter of GIS and started mainstreaming it into the government operations in the early 1990s. A lot was happening with this newfound technology, and then Governor Mel Carnahan formed the Missouri GIS Advisory Committee in 1994 to help facilitate the use of GIS and development of geospatial data within state government. I was a member of that original committee, and I remain one today. But we are a committee on paper only with no authority other than the governor's expectation to do good things. And we did do good things, and a lot of them. But the one thing we did best, and the one that I'm most proud of, is we coordinated very well. Missouri was recognized and respected for its coordination efforts, and we helped set the standard for state coordination in the nation. We expanded the committee to include local governments, utilities, and the private sector, academia, and others. And as we did all of this, we did it with no budget or formal designation from the Missouri government. We were and we continue to be a group of volunteers that wants to make our community a better place. Unlike many commissions or boards, the Missouri GIS Advisory Committee is not codified in state statute. That means the governor or other government official can remove the committee or not follow its recommendations, or more importantly, its role in helping to coordinate the geospatial activities of the state. Existing only on paper isn't a good thing. Having served on the Missouri Board on Geographic Names, I understand the value of codified boards in Missouri. Having a GIS board not only ensures proper coordination, but it helps eliminate waste in governments and keeps everyone, including citizens, informed. This bill might look like an effort to consolidate power for the advisory committee, but it's the exact opposite. The bill is designed to codify the committee and bring folks to the table. It requires state agencies to coordinate and work together. More importantly, it provides a forum to communicate and coordinate so that all of us, not just the state government, do not duplicate efforts or waste money. All of this comes with no direct cost to your constituents. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope you consider moving this bill forward. I look forward to working with you and answering any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Penman. I'm here today representing the State 911 Service Board, and as well as Monina, Moapco, and the Missouri 911 Directors Association. We're very much in support of both the representative and the senator's bills. We think to get NG 911, you have to have three things. You have to have good data, so you know where people are. You have to have high-speed internet, so you can access that information. And you have to have software. That's basically what it's down to. And obviously, you have to have highly trained personnel working in those 911 centers. The GIS data project that this General Assembly supported in appropriations last year, and the tune of $8 million, is on the breach, and documents are sitting in OA ready to go out in RFPs that will make the major move to improving GIS data in every county in the state. We've actually already begun the aerial imagery, which is also incredibly important to first responders as well as dozens and dozens of other entities, having the ability to make coordination happen and working at the state level, so we're not duplicating, creating the same data 8 times and then missing other data. This is a perfect opportunity to do that coordination. So we appreciate your support, and yes, Senator, I will promise you that someday, your phone will stop ringing.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please leave a witness form. And next up, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Senators, Tom Dempsey, registered lobbyist for Greater St. Louis, Inc., to go on record in support of House Bills 475 and Senate Bill 653. Certainly there's been some discussion about the benefits of this council from a public safety perspective. Greater St. Louis, Inc. is interested in this council because of its benefits, potential benefits for economic development. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is in the process of constructing a new campus, 97 acres, 700,000 square feet of office space, expected to move in 2026. They're going to add employees as well, up to another 1,000 employees. This council, as part of the sponsors' legislation has moved through, will support efforts to make sure that we maximize the economic development potential of this investment in downtown St. Louis. And it'll have benefits not only for St. Louis, but the entire state of Missouri, and that's why we support the legislation.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you.
Kara Korches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry in support of both bills. Similar to what Tom just shared, Missouri does have a real opportunity to be a global leader in geospatial, and for these reasons, we are in strong support of both.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like to testify in favor of? Seeing none. Do we have anybody in favor that would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. For informational purposes only. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman Esslinger, Senators. I'm Colonel Bob Payne. I'm the Chief of the Joint Staff for the Missouri National Guard. First, would like to thank Representative Taylor and Senator Roberts for introducing these bills. I just have a very brief statement on behalf of the Adjutant General, Major General Levon Compton, and the Missouri National Guard. So the Missouri National Guard collaborates with several key federal, state, and local partners for planning and training, including the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, the State Emergency Management Agency, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Defense, Defense Intelligence Agency, Missouri Task Force 1, and several other partners. We're very honored to be part of those collaborative efforts. Some examples of those efforts include emergency duty in support of civil authorities, damage assessments, hazard prediction modeling, protection of critical infrastructure, status of roads and key lines of communication, environmental assessments, and mapping of our training areas and installations. And as we know, that technology is ever emerging and applications just seem to grow by the day. So I thank you for the honor of your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Be sure you leave a witness form. All right. I believe that concludes that hearing, unless you have some closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one thing just to clarify, one more point. The Senate version has 7 Missouri economic districts listed as where those private individuals will come from to represent the whole state. We went back to, or we ended up landing on congressional districts because those economic districts were kind of vague and they were hard to define. So that just one more difference. So I appreciate you allowing me to testify. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill, looking for 653, and also on House Bill 42475. All right, so now we will hear testimony on Senate Bill 428. So Senator Carter may begin whenever you're ready.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Senator Jill Carter, District 32. The purpose of this legislation is to ensure that the religious carve-out that was put into the Human Right Act includes churches, private schools, and religious organizations that have been set up as not-for-profits. Many prominent religious organizations in Southwest Missouri also operate as not-for-profits. That would benefit from this cleanup language. Conway of Hope, Catholic Charities of Southwest Southern Missouri, College of the Ozarks in Branson, incorporated as the School of the Ozarks, Grace Classical Academy, a private elementary and high school in Springfield, and James River Church. The religious exemption in the Missouri Human Rights Act, as codified in Section 213.010, subsection 8, does not apply to not-for-profit corporations because not-for-profit corporations do not have owners, and therefore cannot be owned by a religious or sectarian organization. And likewise, excuse me, non-profit corporations are typically operated by a board of directors and officers and sometimes members, not by a religious or sectarian organization. So the purpose of this bill is to make sure religious not-for-profits are included. I would appreciate your support on SB 428.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Senator Carter? Senator Mosley?
So, excuse me. So the Missouri Human Rights Act prohibits discrimination. So you want to stop these people that you're supporting from being held accountable for doing discriminatory actions? Is that what you're trying to do?
No, that's not the intent. The intent is just to include some of the not-for-profits. There still is federal law that prohibits discrimination on a lot of levels, so they would still be held accountable to that. All this does is include not-for-profits that have religious affiliations so that they can hire based on religious beliefs. Jews should be able to be Jews, Christians should be able to be Christians, and so that this carve-out is just that protection. So again, there's federal law that codifies not discriminating based on certain things, and this is just a little bit of a layer of a protection so that they can hire and associate with people that are like-minded.
Which is still being discriminatory.
Well, like I said, a church should be able to hire Christians, not a Muslim preacher, right? So some of this is not, it's based on association, not on necessarily discriminating.
Is that what you think? Okay.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you. So we'll now hear from folks who are in favor of, if we have anybody who want to testify. Good morning. Be sure you leave a witness form.
Yes. Thanks. My name is Tim Davis. I'm a trial attorney in Taney County. I live in Branson, but I handle litigation, commercial litigation in all the surrounding counties, both in state and federal court. I really appreciate Senator Carter introducing this bill to further protect religious freedoms in the state of Missouri. If you were to read the Missouri Human Rights Act, you see there is a carve-out, a religious exemption that says that if it's a corporation or association owned or operated by a religious organization, then it should be exempt. And if a layperson read that, they would think, oh, well, that must apply to churches, or that must apply to Christian colleges, or a Christian private school, or a mosque. In fact, everyone just assumed that, seemingly for decades, until in 2013, a case came before the Supreme Court of Missouri. The case was Farrow versus St. Francis Medical Center, 407 Southwest 3rd, 579. And the question was, well, could the St. Francis Medical Center be held accountable under the Missouri Human Rights Act, since it was, in fact, facially a religious organization? The Supreme Court of Missouri addressed that issue and said, no, the Missouri Human Rights Act does apply. St. Francis Medical can't claim an exemption because it's a nonprofit corporation. And nonprofit corporations, under Chapter 355 of the Missouri statutes, don't have owners. They have a board of directors, but those board of directors aren't owners. They're simply charged with managing the nonprofit corporation. By the same time, by the same token, nonprofit corporations are not going to be operated by a religious denomination. Nonprofit corporations, again, are operated by their board of directors and by their officers. Those officers are required by statute to be a president, a secretary, and a treasurer at least. You could have other officers, but basically you have to have those three. The result is that just because of the wording of this carve-out in the Human Rights Act, that any church, any Christian school, any Christian college, any mosque, any synagogue that happen to be set up as a nonprofit corporation, as most of them are, all the more sophisticated ones are probably going to be set up that way, they don't fall within the exemption of the Missouri Human Rights Act. So it's, again, it's not something a lay person would likely to pick up on. I happen to litigate in this area a lot, and so I'm aware of it. Shaping that carve-out to take into account nonprofit corporations that happen to be also religious organizations is important. What the bill also does is that it makes uniform the way the Missouri Human Rights Act applies across the state, whether it's going to be enforced at the state level or at the local level. Because the way that the act is written, a city or a county can adopt its own non-discrimination ordinance. It just happened, I think, from a business perspective, it's cleaner if the statute applies uniformly across the state. And one of the most important ways that this could be shown is the Missouri legislature, last time they amended the statute, said the standard of causation for discrimination that we're going to use as a motivating factor. This is such a blessing if you litigate in the area, because it makes clear what the standard of causation is to prove discrimination. Federal statutes have been less clear, and the Supreme Court has wasted hundreds of pages of documents talking about, do we use a sole factor, do we use a determinative factor, do we use but-for causation, do we use a motivating factor or a substantial factor? All these have been tossed around like a salad. It's so much cleaner, makes any litigation so much more efficient. When the Missouri legislature said, at the state level, we're going to use a motivating factor, it also helps if any litigation under a local ordinance uses the motivating factor as well. So it's just so much cleaner if the way the law applies at the state level is the way that it applies at the local level. So those are my comments. Thanks for listening to me today.
Are there any further questions for this witness?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Rosalie.
with this bill, are you saying that like a Catholic school shouldn't be able to hire someone that's not Catholic to work there?
That's right. So for religious organizations to function effectively, they must be able to discriminate based on religion. You cannot have the forced inclusion of people who don't share your ideology and your doctrine. It would just make propagating a certain gospel message or the message of a certain denomination untenable by the forced inclusion of people who don't believe in that message.
So a Catholic school, so would they discriminate against students who are not Catholic as well?
As long as they don't receive Title IX funding, they would be able to. But as soon as a school starts receiving Title IX funding, then all the federal regulations from the U.S. Department of Education kick in, and you would not be able to discriminate at that point.
I find this interesting because my mother, who was a teacher, taught a lot of years at the actual Catholic school, and when she got her PhD, she moved on to the public schools, but they did not want her to even leave, and she's not Catholic. She's a Christian, but she's not Catholic. So I'm not in agreement with your thoughts that you should discriminate against people because they're not the same religion to work in a Catholic school or a Catholic hospital or whatever.
Yes, it is a bit counterintuitive saying that we're going to expressly allow these religious organizations to discriminate based on religion. But you can imagine, let's suppose we had a mosque here in Jefferson City or in Kansas City, and we say we're going to use the police power of the state to force that mosque to hire a Christian pastor to be its local leader. Well, that would be, under First Amendment rights, under the freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom of expressive association, it's never going to fly in federal court. But it just doesn't make sense intuitively to say we're going to force a Christian organization to incorporate people who are not of that denomination or not of that religion.
Well, you're speaking of a church. I'm speaking of a Catholic school who I would assume you would want to bring people of all denominations in so they can learn about your religion. How else would they know about your religion? Being a Christian, you don't tell people you can't come to church because you're not a Christian yet. So I'm not understanding your logic.
Yes, well, you do raise a good point. So in the Catholic school, it could be quite useful to have people from other religions come in and speak about their religions. That could be really useful, I believe would be useful. It's an entirely different matter to say we're going to take the police power of the state and we're going to force that school to have employees of other religions come.
Well, I've never heard of any person, any Catholic school saying they had a problem with hiring people who were non-Catholics. Never heard that.
They may not have said it, but it's one thing for the school to voluntarily hire non-Catholics. It's an entirely different matter to say that the police power of the state is going to be used to force them to hire non-Catholics. And the Catholic school, the Catholic Church does famously discriminate both based on religion and sex and family status because they only hire single men as priests. So again, the Catholic Church doesn't hire women as priests, and they don't have married priests. So they are discriminating, and they don't hire non-Catholics as priests. So the Catholic Church does consistently discriminate, and federal law has been able to adapt to that. Title VII has an exemption that bars discrimination in employment, but still accommodates the Catholic Church.
Okay. Any further questions?
She asked a question.
Yes, Senator Crawford.
Thank you. Just for clarification, this would not keep them from in the Catholic school example. This would not keep them from hiring whoever they wanted to. It would just allow them maybe to have you wouldn't want some of the religion teaching Catholic religion in the school. Am I understanding that correctly?
You're correct. It doesn't prevent them from hiring whoever they want.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Beck.
Sorry I'm late. Did not have this on my calendar. I thought I had a free morning, so I'm just lollygagging around drinking coffee, and then I come here for this. So apologize for being late. Couple questions. One, so you're trying to expand who can discriminate. Is that what we're trying to do here?
That's correct. So we're saying if your religious organization is set up as a nonprofit, we're going to allow them to discriminate. We're not going to stop them from discriminating simply because they chose the nonprofit corporate structure.
Okay, so it also says you're taking out the section where it says sectarian organizations too, right? Are we eliminating that? And do we have a list of, I guess I got two questions. One, you're taking out line 60, unless there's some sort of substitute, 61 through 63 on page 3.
Oh, if it is, I don't know if that, I don't know that that language needs to be taken out. I think that's the language that's currently in there.
Yeah, and that's what brackets mean and highlight.
That language is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The problem is that language didn't include nonprofit corporations.
Okay, so currently, as we said, because unfortunately I was here for when we did the change to the Human Rights Act, when they changed it from a motivating factor to the motivating factor. So basically, you can't prove it at all. It would be hard. You can just say, yeah, he was late on a Tuesday, and that's why we fired them. But you want to expand that opportunity to all religious organizations, or you want to actually get rid of that altogether, correct? Is that what I'm reading here? I'm kind of confused.
It says if the entity is a nonprofit corporation is organized or operated for a religious purpose, then it can discriminate based on religion.
Okay, but on line 76,
Yes.
page 3 also, says a corporation or association that exempt from federal taxation.
Yep.
So could be several. What are those? Can you have a list of what those corporations, which ones those could be?
Based on my understanding, those are not-for-profits, basically, that have religious.
I mean, but there's a lot of organizations out there that are non-for-profits that are not religious.
That's true, and that's why the subsections A and B further narrow it down. They say the federal government has to recognize you as tax exempt, and then further narrowing it down, you have to be owned or operated by one or more religious or sectarian organizations.
So that would be like the Salvation Army. Would that be? Give me some.
On how they're set up. Some Salvation Armies, I assume some Salvation Army churches are probably set up as nonprofit corporations. Some of them may never have gone through the nonprofit incorporating process. They might just be associations.
But just to be clear, you want to expand the ability to be able to discriminate against people.
Yes.
That's correct.
Thank you.
In a nutshell.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Senator Mosley.
Going back to Senator Crawford's question, so you want to discriminate against teachers who are not Catholic to come to a Catholic school because you don't want them to teach Catholic religion. Is that what you're saying?
Not that we want to do that, but we want to make sure the Catholic school has a right to hire people who are of its religion if it so chooses.
But can't you hire Catholic people already?
That's true. The Catholic school can hire Catholic people already, but the interest is to shield that school from being forced by the state to hire people who are not Catholic.
Okay.
So, okay, again, my mother was a Catholic school teacher, and none of her courses required her to teach any other students the Catholic religion. When they went to Mass is when they learned about the Catholic religion, and they learned the Mass from the nuns of the school, and the priest. So I'm not understanding why you would need to discriminate against teachers who are not Catholic from teaching in a Catholic school. She was an excellent teacher. As I said, they did not want her to leave because she's an excellent teacher. Also, my aunt taught at the Catholic school.
Well, you can imagine, suppose you're...
Friends of mine attended Catholic schools who are not Catholic.
Right. And I'm completely in favor of non-Catholics attending Catholic school and of the Catholic schools hiring whomever they want. But again, if the Catholic school wants to be able to protect the Christian message that it speaks out to the population, if it's forced to include people who don't believe in that message, that would seriously undermine its ability to project its Christian message, and to the detriment of the freedom of religion of people who are involved in the Catholic Church, and certainly to the detriment of their ability to have expressive association whereby like-minded people bind together for the purpose of expressing a particular viewpoint, in this case, a particular religious viewpoint.
So you're okay with Catholic schools having non-Catholic students come to the school?
Yes.
So you're okay with people paying to attend your school, but you don't want to pay a non-Catholic to work at your school? That's what you're saying?
Well, I wouldn't mind paying a non-Catholic to work at the school. I just don't want the state to force me to hire a non-Catholic.
Okay. Any further questions? Senator Beck.
Just one more question. So I'm thinking about some amendments for this bill, but one of them would be like, we have a lot of religious schools that take state money to now take kids for ESAs. So since there would be state money involved in there, would you be okay with saying that they would not be able to get this exemption?
Oh, that's totally fine, because that is in the nature of a contractual restriction. The school has the choice whether it takes the money or not.
Okay.
And if the school would say, yes, I'm going to take the money, they understand that with that money is going to come federal regulation. That's certainly true of
Yeah, I don't like the rest of the bill at all, but I will think about that if this moves any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Next witness, please. Good morning.
My name is Jody Cucarese, and I'm just a local, I'm here on behalf of personal capacity, a local member of a faith congregation in Southwest Missouri. Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Jody Cucarese, and I'm here just as a member of a local faith congregation in Southwest Missouri.
Okay.
I'm in favor of Senate Bill 428.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, I think that's it. Unless you have a testimony.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, just a couple of things. And just to echo Senator Carter's statement, Christians to be Christians, Jews allowed to be Jews, Muslims allowed to be Muslims. Attending a Christian community in Southwest Missouri. Also, I lived in Jerusalem, Israel for 3 months, attended a Shabbat of an Orthodox family every Friday night for 3 months while I was there. And have an invitation to return for all eternity, they said. I see the beauty of allowing faith to be shared, yet in the same term, a simple term that we all would know, birds of a feather, to stay together. The beauty of individual religions. And so as far as a biblical church community in Southwest Missouri, which we see all over the state, beautiful representations of that, the church being attended by people of all ages, ethnically, racially diverse, dozens of cultures and languages represented, people with disabilities welcome, no discrimination as who walks through our doors. People of any religious background or no religious background are welcome to attend the local body that I'm a part of. There's no requirement for a person to be a Christian to attend at all. We've got folks with criminal past, those coming out of addiction, people from other religions. They come to a local church body anywhere in the state and they can find help. It's a different matter, however, when a church or my Jewish friends in Israel would be forced to accept me as a Christian believer. I would never even consider that, to impose that upon them. So when it comes to membership or employment at a local body, just being a member of a local body, in terms of the way that people live out their Christian faith, we would say it could be devastating to a faith community to begin to have any type of state interference saying that those who have a different lifestyle or have any type of damaging witness to the testimony of a church, other than what the biblical testimony would be, could be damaging to the testimony. So we welcome all, love all, and just simply here in support to say that, to echo her statement one more time, that Jews being Jews, Christians being Christians, and Muslims being Muslims. I would agree that any of them should have the same ability to share their faith in the state as they desire to.
Are there any questions for this witness? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much. Do we have any additional witness in favor of? Do we have? Did you need? Do you, okay. Okay, so do we have anybody who would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. And for informational purposes only, seeing none. So, Senator, do you have any closing remarks?
Right, this again is just to protect a carve out for not-for-profits that are already doing business based on their religious beliefs. We are seeing across the country and in Missouri certain municipalities adopt language that would force these not-for-profits to hire certain people based on their beliefs. And so there is a little bit of a threat to religious freedom with these not-for-profits and these religious affiliations having to hire people that doesn't necessarily align with their values and belief systems. So this would just be a little bit of a protection and a carve out. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 428, and with nothing else before the committee, we are adjourned. Ah, well. Hey, can I get a second? Sorry. You have to move to adjourn. Do you really?
Yes.